Hello there. Welcome to an early afternoon edition of Late Night Thoughts with Rake. Last video I made before the draft, I talked about how Keenan Allen's value was going to be heavily impacted by the NFL draft. And obviously, we know they ended up selecting Justin Herbert. This time around, I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be talking about two wide receiver rooms that the community at large doesn't have the best read on right now, and I think that's well reflected in their average draft positions. These teams share some similarities. They both wear blue, and they both have new play callers going into the 2020 season. I'll give you a second to guess. If you guessed the Texans and the Giants, congratulations. I'm going to start with the Giants first, and the wide receiver I want to start with Darius Slayton. Really hot rookie year last year. He had 1,197 air yards. And what an air yard is basically how far the ball travels from the quarterback to the catch point of the wide receiver, whether the ball was completed or not. So players with high air yards get targeted down the field at a higher rate than others, and that generally corresponds to splash plays and winning weeks from your wide receivers. He also led the team in average depth of target with 14.2, and you can find those air yards numbers at airyards.com. Very useful site. Slayton's going around pick 122 in FFPC drafts per player profiler data, and I think that's a fair. I mean, I would take him in redraft every time there. Once you get past rounds 8, 9, 10, you can really throw ADP out the window and just target guys you think will either give you useful fantasy weeks or help you win a championship down the line. And I think Slayton's one of those guys if he pops. And obviously, he's the highest cost of the three wide receivers right now. So if he starts hot in the beginning of the regular season, it's going to be really tough to buy him in Dynasty because his stock has been trending up basically since the year started last year. So it's going to be hard to buy him at any value uh, if he does pop, and which he very well may. The next receiver I want to talk about is Golden Tate. Going around pick 178, once again, per player profiler, FFPC data. And I want to thank Curtis Patrick as well from RotoViz for putting this split together with their Game Splits app and a 9-game split with Daniel Jones. Golden Tate, on a 16-game pace, paced 84 receptions, 1,081 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And that would average around 15.5 fantasy PPR points per game, which is a very heavy, real fantasy contributor. Um, I think Tate's being criminally underrated so far in this year's draft. Uh, and that's kind of been the same throughout his career. Even when he went to the Seahawks and when he's been on the Lions, Tate's never really been viewed as a top wide receiver asset. I feel like, at least. So um, there's one thing to pull away. I think Golden Tate can really outperform his average draft position and easily give you usable fantasy weeks if you want to go RB heavy. The last receiver that is really of note on this team is Sterling Shepard. He's going a little higher than Tate, but lower than Slayton. He's at pick 152 around about. He's going to be older than you think. He's going to be 27 when the season starts. And once again, from player profiler injury data, he's had 2 concussions in the past year, which is concerning both from a short-term health perspective and a long-term health perspective as well. Um, Even still, last year he averaged about 8.5 targets a game when he was healthy. But I don't think it'll really matter if you're the wide receiver 3 in the Giants' offense. I don't think the offensive pie chart will, if you will be robust enough to not only support 3 top 36 wide receivers. And it's unfortunate because Shepard doesn't really have touchdown upside. He doesn't exactly have deep ball upside, and he's okay yards after the catch. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Shepard to not only outperform ADP, but just to give you usable fantasy weeks as a whole. So to wrap it up for the Giants wide receiver room, Golden Tate is way too late, I believe. Um, Once again, will the offensive pie chart be enough to sustain three wide receivers? I mean, maybe Shepard, Tate, and Slayton all get theirs, but I think the chances of that are very unlikely. And one more, if Darius Slayton pops, good luck getting him as the season goes on because it's going to be very tough. Moving on to Houston, I think the first thing that obviously needs to be addressed is DeAndre Hopkins leaving in his 10 targets a game that he always commanded. Now, I think one would first think that, well, DeAndre Hopkins commanded 150, 160 targets a year. He's leaving those behind for other wide receivers. And I once thought that way too, but Peter Howard's done a lot of work. I believe he writes for DLF about how you can't simply just take targets from a guy that leaves and spread them out across other wide receivers because it's not sticky whatsoever. I encourage you to read more of his work. He's a very bright fantasy mind. Like the Giants, new offensive coordinator Tim Kelly. It's gonna be good that Bill O'Brien's not calling plays anymore, but it's still gonna be interesting to see. We're gonna look at Will Fuller first. He's going around pick 96, which is top of the 8th round, in 12-team leagues. He's only played 18 of 32 regular season games the past 2 years. But despite that, last year he averaged 18th in yards per target and 12th in average target distance. He also had over 300 unrealized air yards, so there were more yards and touchdowns left on the field. I think the consensus has always been, well, when Will Fuller's healthy, he can win you weeks. But it'll be hard to justify his ADP with the injury history. But once you, like I said earlier with Slayton, once you reach round 8, round 9, even round 7, you can really throw ADP out the window and get guys you think are going to win you championships. And Fuller can be that. And he doesn't have to even exactly stay healthy for him to be that kind of contributor for your team. The same might be able to be said for Brandon Cooks as well. I think when people think of Brandon Cooks, you envision him getting lit up on the field by either a safety or a linebacker or even corner. But he's played in 29 of 32 regular season games, although he was pulled early in 3 of them, so that number is a little crooked. Over 400 unrealized air yards for the Rams last year, so more yards left on the field. Neither Fuller or Cooks are big yards after the catch guys, but they probably won't need to be on this Houston offense that's probably going to be attacking deep a lot. Their defense is still not that good. So I think Deshaun Watson's going to be throwing the ball a lot still. Cooks is going a round after Will Fuller in drafts, so around the top of round 9. And once again, just with the same point, it's once you reach those later rounds, it's guys you think you can win weeks and ultimately win you championships. Cooks may very well be that, but he's had Tom Brady. He's had Drew Brees. He's been a top 12 guy like once or twice. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. So it's unlikely, but I don't think you'll be mad with what he's going to give you at round 9. So moving on. Who will the wide receiver 3 be for the Texans? Because Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills are going around the same ADP. Past pick 200, so very late in drafts. One of those will perform ADP, but I think the question is, will it matter at all? Houston ran 4 wide receivers per Sharp Football Stats on 5 total plays last year. five total plays, while they trotted out 3 wide receivers, or basically 11 personnel, on 64% of plays. But one thing that did surprise me is that they ran 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, on 30% of their plays last year. So maybe Kahale Waring, or Jordan Akins, or Jordan Thomas, or Darren Fells could definitely outperform their ADP, at least in the touchdown department. So just to wrap it up for the Texans, with Cobb and Stills, I don't think it's going to matter who gets more snaps between the two because I don't think either of them can really offer that much upside where in the situation that they're in. Will everyone get cannibalized? Maybe. Deshaun Watson has spread the ball out pretty much outside of DeAndre Hopkins throughout his career. But I think one thing there is to take away from this is to buy Deshaun Watson. I think he's still going to be throwing the ball deep a lot. He still has the rushing upside. And I see people ranking Josh Allen ahead of him, and I just don't see it. Even with the Allens that weapon has, Deshaun Watson's just not only a far better talent, which doesn't exactly mean he'll be a better fantasy asset, but we were just talking about him going nuclear last year, and he loses Hopkins, but I don't think just losing Hopkins means he's going to be a lot worse of a quarterback in terms of fantasy production. And that's really going to wrap it up. Hopefully this helps you rationalize how these two wide receiver rooms are going to perform and give you a little actionable intel on how to attack these guys in drafts. I'm still going to do my team previews. Atlanta's going to be next, so that should be exciting. And as I come up with these ideas, I'll try and keep uploading them as quick as I can. So just follow my Twitter at Rake NFL. I always try to interact with anyone that interacts with me. So thank you.